All right, this lesson is all about something called benchmark fractions. Not to be confused with what we use for our reading, these are fractions that we round to. Because sometimes we want to know, okay, are we close in our answer? So we have to be able to round our fractions to what's close. And there are three benchmark fractions that we round to. We either round to 0, 1/2, or 1/2. Now let's think about what are some ways to write 0 in fractions. I might write 0 thirds, 0 fourths, 0 tenths, 0 eighths. 0 anything is going to be 0. No matter how big the pieces are, if I have none of them, that's 0. What are some fractions that are exactly equal to 1/2? We're going to skip over to 1/2 for a second. Well, 1/2 is like the whole pizza. So if it was divided into fourths, that's 4 fourths. If it was divided into eighths, that's 8 eighths. 10 tenths, 2 halves, 3 thirds. I have all the pieces to equal 1/2. 1/2 is if I have half of the pieces. So if we're talking about tenths, that's 5 tenths because 5 is half of 10. If it's fourths, 2 fourths because 2 is half of 4. It's eighths, 4 eighths because 4 is half of 8. So anytime the top number is half of the bottom number, that's equal to 1/2. Now you might be thinking, why does this matter? What is equal to these? Because if I get a fraction that's not exactly equal to one of these three, then I will just round it to one of these three. I'll say it's close to one of these three. Okay? I'll give you an example of what I mean. If I have a fraction like 1/5, and I'm like, okay, about how big is 1/5? Is it closer to 0, 1/2, or 1? Let's think about what 1/5 looks like. I find that drawing it is helpful. Now, fifths are a little tricky to get exact, so I'm just going to approximate. Okay, I divided my bar into 5 pieces. I know they're not exactly the same size, but they're pretty close. If you have a notebook paper, you can do it so that it's exact, though. Just use the lines, like draw on the lines. Okay, so 1/5. Come on, pen. Sorry, sometimes my pen has a freak out moment and it doesn't want to work. There we go. All right, so 1/5. So now I want to think about, okay, 0 would be if there were none filled in. 1 would be if they were all filled in. 1/2 would be right in the middle. So I can say, okay, what's 1/5 closest to? Look, it's closest to 0. It's this far away from 1/2. It's this far away from 0. So I would round it to 0. I only have one piece out of 5 pieces, which is not much. So that would be rounded to 0. Bear with me if this still isn't making sense. We'll get there. More examples will help. 2/5. Say I get 2/5. Well, okay, is it closest to 0, 1/2, or 1? Again, those are the benchmark fractions that I round to. I'm going to draw it out because that can be helpful. Again, I'm just freehanding it. If you have a notebook paper, you can use that to help you. So if I have, okay, 2 out of the 5 are colored in. Well, this is 0, this is 1, this is 1/2. Look, what's it closer to? Is it closer to 0 or is it closer to 1/2? It's closer to 1/2, so that's what I would round it to. I'd say it's about 1/2. It's not exactly 1/2, but it's close. Okay? Say I have 5/6. Is that closest to 0, 1/2, or 1? Now, there's different ways to think about it. You might be saying, okay, well, I know that 6/6 is 1. That's really close. 5, I'm only missing one piece, so it's probably closest to 1 is my guess. 1/2, okay, well that would be 3/6, and I'm 2/6 away from that, so it's probably not that. And I know it's definitely bigger than 1/2, so it's not going to be 0. I can always draw it if I'm not sure. Okay, so divide it into 6. If I have 5 of them, then I can estimate, I can say, okay, 0, ooh, it's really far away from 0. 1 is over here. It's looking like it's almost full, so that's a good guess. 3 is right in the middle. Which is it closer to? Well, it's closer to 1 whole, which I also knew from thinking about, okay, 6/6 is 1 whole, 3/6 is 1/2. So 5 is closer to 6 than it is to 3. The keyword for this video, I will do some more examples, but the keyword is football, like the sport, football. So if you are keeping track, which hopefully you are, that's the one for this video. Now I'll do some more examples because benchmarks are tricky. Don't forget, I will also help you if you get stuck. All right, say I have 1/8. Am I going to round that to 0, 1/2, or 1? What is it closest to? Now you might have an idea already because you might say, okay, this is 0/8, this is 4/8, and this is 8/8. So if I only have 1 piece, is that closer to 0 pieces, 4 pieces, or 8 pieces? Well, I'm thinking it's closer to 0 because it's 1 away, and it's 3 away from 4/8. But let's draw a picture just to help us visualize. Okay, I got to divide into eighths. I like to start by dividing in half since it's an even number, and then I can even divide it each piece in half, and then each piece in half. Again, if you have a notebook paper, just count out 8 lines and make each line like a piece. All right, so I only have 1/8. So that's 0, 1/2, 1. Which one's it closer to? Definitely closer to 0. So I was right. And if drawing the picture doesn't help, just think about how many pieces each one is. Either way works, but if this way of doing it confuses you, draw a picture and see which one is closest to that way. Now, if I had, I'm not going to erase the whole thing because, oopsies, come on, eraser, there you go. So now if I have 3/8 now, I can think about, okay, I still have 0/8, 4/8, 8/8. Now I'm only 1 away from 4/8. I'm pretty close to 4/8. If I fill in 3, suddenly instead of being closer to 0, now I'm actually pretty close to 1/2. So I would round 3/8 to 1/2 if I was just going to estimate about how big it was. And then say I had 7/8. Well, now that's almost the whole thing filled in. So I can say, is it closer to 4/8 or 8/8? Well, it's closer to 8/8. It's close to 1 whole, so I would round it to 1 whole. Now, one more example, because sometimes it gets a little tricky. If I have something like 2/3, because when I draw 2/3, and then if I say, okay, 0, 1/2, or 1, okay, I think it's closer to 1/2, but depending on my drawing, like that might not tell me enough. So if I think, okay, well, let's write an equivalent fraction. I'm going to multiply them by 2. So now I have 4/6. 6 are a little bit easier because I know that 1/2 is 3/6 and 1 whole is 6/6. Well, I have 4, and 4 is closer to 3 than it is to 6, so it tells me it's closer to 1/2. So my picture was right, but I just wanted to be sure it wasn't misleading me so I could write an equivalent fraction to help me. Now, if you still need help, let me know. You got this. Good luck.